This new update could ruin the Houston Rockets. In a new mock trade, it has a former NBA All-Star heading to Houston next season, but in exchange for a hefty package, which I am not a fan of. And so in this video, we are going to break down that new report and all the things that come along with it. Hello, welcome to Rockets Digest. I am your host, Donovan Ricondo, and today we're going to get straight into things right now. As many of you know, trade talks have run rampant around the Houston Rockets organization, with many names being thrown out there in terms of who we are going to get rid of in exchange for a guy like Giannis, a guy like KD. You know all the stories. But guys like Jalen Green, Tari Eason, and even a guy like Alperen Şengün are not quite safe from these trade talks as of yet. On the flip side of that, there's the Utah Jazz, which are coming off a very terrible season last year. They did not acquire the number 1 overall pick, and they were kind of already in a rebuild. Now they're just even more of a rebuild, so they are potentially seeking to trade away their all-star Lauri Markkanen away from the team in exchange for some new assets. And this is what a new report has shown. A new mock trade has this package right here. Houston Rockets will receive Lauri Markkanen in a trade with Utah Jazz, and in exchange, they will give up Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, and a 2028 first-round pick. Now, before I dive deep into my opinion on this trade, quite frankly, we're going to take a look at Lauri Markkanen, right? Let's look at his stats from last season. How did he do? Well, he averaged 19 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists, half a block, half a steal, 1.4 turnovers. He shot 42% from the field with a 34% three-point percentage. That is actually a little bit lower than he typically does. He's usually in the high 30s, early 40s in terms of three-point percentage. He's 7 foot tall, power forward, who could also play the small forward position, 28 years old. And the stat that I thought was very interesting, 100% of his threes are assisted, which makes sense when you're a guy who's 7 foot. You're not, he's not a Wemby. He's not a Chet Holmgren who can take things off the dribble. So I thought that was very interesting, right? But here's a guy who has, solid numbers. The numbers aren't terrible. But what I do want to point out in this trade package, right, is what they said about Lauri Markkanen and his fit with the Houston Rockets next season. Quote, Markkanen fits seamlessly next to Şengün and Thompson. Thanks to his off-ball gravity, he can help space the floor for them while being able to score on his own when needed. End quote. And I don't disagree. I don't think, adding a guy like him, pairing him up with a guy like Şengün and Amen Thompson, it would be basketball magic. I think it could very well work. I think he adds a lot of value if he were to be on this team. He's a big that can help stretch the floor and knock down the three-point shot. That is, in a sense, what we need. I would prefer if it was more of a shooter, but a guy like Lauri Markkanen, any team would be lucky to have a former All-Star who is still, 28 years old. He's not old. He's not like Westbrook or James Harden age. He is still got lots of years left to play in the NBA. But what I want to point out is that this trade essentially is Jalen Green for Lauri Markkanen. I know there's guys like Cam Whitmore and Tari Eason in 2028 first-round draft pick, and I'll get to all of that in a second. But ultimately, the players that we are going to talk about, that the NBA world is going to talk about, is Jalen Green for Lauri Markkanen. And if you ask me, the numbers quite don't make much sense. Let's take a look at the stats from Lauri Markkanen. As you saw earlier, 19 points per game. If we look at Jalen Green, 21 points per game. 4.6 rebounds for Jalen Green. Lauri Markkanen, despite being 7 foot tall, only 6 rebounds per game, which is a little bit questionable. 1.5 assists for Lauri Markkanen, 3.4 for a guy like Jalen Green. And so I see this, and I see the numbers that are right there on the screen. And I'm not exactly enthused of giving away our first leading overall scorer for a guy who, one, isn't a guard, and two, is averaging less points already. Now, To be fair, Lauri Markkanen has had seasons where he's averaged 25, 23 points a game. But I also would like to point out that he did significantly have a drop off in his point production this season. Now, again, Lauri Markkanen did suffer some injuries this season. He did not play all 82 games. He only played 47 games, had a lower back and knee injury throughout the entire season. But I think it still remains the same. In the games that he played, that's still a substantial sample size, 40 games. That's a little bit over half of the season. Still only averaging 19 points. And so I just cannot justify trading away your leading scorer for a guy who scores less. I understand that there's a potential upside of getting a guy who's probably a little bit more of a reliable 3-point shooter, but I also just don't see it happening. And one of the things that I read in that article was something that really caught my eye. It says right here, quote, from the House of Houston, which is where this mock trade comes from. It says, quote, Whitmore is a talented young player with upside, but he is unlikely to reach his potential buried behind Houston's impressive wing depth. Which, really quickly, debatable. I understand where this guy is coming from. I understand we have a lot of guards on the team right now, and right now he's not getting as much playing time. I think there's still hope in developing a guy like Cam Whitmore, but nevertheless, let's carry on. Eason will require a contract extension, and his long-term fit next to Alperen Şengün and Amen Thompson is questionable due to his lack of shooting. Not entirely wrong there, but let's carry on. Jalen Green is overpaid on his deal, and the Rockets have an obvious need to upgrade in his position. End quote. And that right there is what really, really didn't make much sense to me. Because as of right now, Lauri Markkanen, I believe he is getting paid close to the $50 million mark. I have the graphic right here. He's getting paid $50 million up until 2028-2029 season. So he's average. Okay, so he's 46, 49, 46. Yes, okay. So that's still a hefty fee for a guy that I have already said, has averaged less in the past season and has these injuries that show to have affected his game. Whereas Jalen Green, despite his lackluster playoff performance, I understand he did not have the best playoff series against the Golden State Warriors. It is not an excuse. It is not something that he should not work on. He has something to prove next year. Absolutely. But the production overall and the salary, key thing, the salary is much, much less. Because I do not think Jalen Green is being overpaid. I think he's being paid the amount that he probably deserves and that he's shown so far. Because honestly, we are getting kind of a deal on him right now. $36 million for a guy who this organization still believes to be that guy, to be that number one primary scorer, albeit the lackluster playoff performance. He is still the guy that you can count on, and he is under contract for at least the 2026-2027 season. He has the player option in the 2027-28 season. But you are getting away with paying this guy not as much money compared to guys like a Devin Booker, who they were interested in, and who makes a lot more money than $36 million, or a Kevin Durant, or some other primary scorer guy who is getting paid much more money. And so you're kind of getting away, as of right now, for the deal that he signed when he was younger, and you're getting a lot of good things out of it. There's still things to develop with Jalen Green. There's still so much of his game that he has to work on in terms of bettering all aspects of his game. But to say that he is overpaid, I think is an overstatement. It is not, I don't think, true. He still could, next year, if we're in the playoffs and he does not show up again, then we can be talking about, we will be having a different conversation. But as it stands right now, I don't believe in the overpaid statement. And I do not think that trading this player for a guy like Lauri Markkanen makes much sense. Because if we go back to this trade here, what I really want to point out is that, honestly, I think this trade makes more sense if it was a straight up Jalen Green for Lauri Markkanen in terms of the value for each, because Jalen Green is younger. Jalen Green has showed a lot of upside. Lauri Markkanen did not have the best year last season. He is an NBA All-Star. I feel like that straight up makes more sense, because I feel like in this mock trade, Houston gives up so much. They're giving up Tari Eason, who started some games for the Houston Rockets last season. They're giving up Cam Whitmore, who has huge, huge upside. And on top of that, they are getting rid of a 2028 first-round pick. To me, that is too much to give up for a guy who is not even going to be your shooting guard or your main primary scorer next season. If you add Lauri Markkanen to the team next year, I would assume, just from the way this team plays, that Alperen Şengün would transition to that lead scorer. But you still need your two guy. You still need your guard. You still need that guy to be on the team. And in this trade, you're getting rid of that guy for someone who, albeit is a very, very good basketball player, but not exactly what this team needs right now. I feel like there's a bunch of other guys on the market in free agency, other shooters that you can acquire to make this team better next season. And so, quite frankly, I am not someone who is a fan of this trade. I don't think it makes much sense to make this trade. Again, Lauri Markkanen, great player, but just is not exactly what this team needs right now. I think you stick with a guy like Jalen Green, who the front office has said to, want to keep and maintain for next season. I said you hold on to Cam Whitmore if you can. Tari Eason, I feel like that's a little bit more flexible in terms of what you can get out there. And then, of course, I just don't think including that 2028 first-round pick is all that necessary. If you're going to trade that later on, go ahead, but not for this trade right here. And that is all I really have to say about this trade. If we were to make that trade, it would absolutely just ruin our chances next season and not make much sense to me. And let me know in the comments what you think of this trade. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. This has been another episode of Rockets Digest. We'll see you next time.